Hello and welcome back to the channel. This is a GP-30 and I obtained this Lionel shell some time ago because I wanted GP-30s in my roster for the Chicago Great Western that I model. And I particularly like GP-30s. They're kind of unique. The cab, the styling. And so I got the body and it did need some help. Initially the fans were missing on the top, so I developed those and printed those on a 3D printer, and I'm pretty happy with the way they turned out. However, if you pick up a shell at a train show or off the internet on one of these, you basically only get the body. There's no trucks, there's no infrastructure inside usually, and like in the case of this one, I'll show you a few defects in the body that need some repair help. So my approach to this has been to develop parts, first of all, to give it the internal infrastructure. So if I want to bring and introduce power on this and build in a motor to run this and not just have a dummy engine, I started developing the flooring and the parts that would support having power in this. For now, it's just a dummy unit. The way I went about doing this is I prototyped a lot of my parts in FreeCAD for what I needed. For example, some of these frameworks, which may look a little bit familiar if you've seen some of my F3, F7 All Nations work, I've left openings in here so that if it had a tower drive, it would be able to power the trucks. Same thing for the other end. And then I have the railing infrastructure that'll hold the two power platforms together, and I can mount in anywhere from a 1,500 gallon fuel tank to, or up to, I think, 2,500, 2,600 gallon tank. I decided on my locomotive I wanted the 1,700 gallon tank. So I prototyped these parts first, print them in PLA, and after that, once I'm happy with them, I change over and print them in PETG plastic because it's stronger, it drills and taps nicely, and I would like to show you in a minute what I've done so far on this model. So now I'm going to take this model off the trucks and give you a view on the underside of this model. Set this off to the side for now, and I want to show you that I have this partially assembled already. And instead of going through the exercise of assembling it and taking up a lot of your video time, we're just going to explain what we've done here. So initially with my patterns that I developed in PLA, and for the front and the back, you will see that I have my railings for mounting the fuel tank and attaching the two platforms with two 440 screws here and two 440 screws there, and those 440 screws are 1/4 inch long. And what I've done is I've tapped the ends of these railings with a 440 tap, and on the fuel tank mount you can see I have holes already, right here, where they're pilot holes, and I usually countersink those so that the head of the 440 3/8 screw goes into this, and it just sticks out about 1/8 of an inch to attach to the fuel tank to these. And so this would come out in one section. So as you can see on the underside of this model, I already have the component parts assembled. The white ones here were my patterns that I developed first and printed, tested, made sure they fit into the body. And what I went ahead to do is, for mounting the fuel tank, I countersink these so that the 440 machine screw 3/8 in length will stick through about 1/8 of an inch on this side and grab into the fuel tank. And what I did was I actually threaded the fuel tank so that these 440 machine screws work very nicely. These machine screws attaching the railings, I'm showing it in white versus the gold here because it contrasts a little better. I tapped the ends of these for the 440, but those are 1/4 inch in length 440 screws. So what's really tricky about this model when developing these patterns is if I take this off, because I don't have it mounted to the body, it's just fit, and I flip this over, you can see that I have those screws mounting the fuel tank are relatively deep, which is fine. There's plenty of material, and all the cutouts and spaces that were developed to make this fit like a glove is because of all the issues here around this platform on the Lionel body. For instance, whatever they had mounted here, and I'm not that familiar with Lionel, this is a 256 thread on both of these. So obviously something was mounted here. They have other holes here, and I will determine how I want to use these to mount this platform. Obviously there's some defects in this body because it's been around for a while. The back end needs a little help, a little epoxy. There was some issues here, and I believe this had a little crack here and a crack in the floor. Those are easily fixed. There's another crack here. Probably this model had an accident, perhaps, or somebody squeezed it too tight and cracked the plastic, but we'll fix that with a little glue and epoxy and start adding the details. So the difficult problem next to solve is to get the body and this mounted correctly on the right height on your trucks. And it's hard for me to say and model that in here because you may want to use a different style truck. These GP units on the 30s had two different style trucks, and your height may vary. And so when I go to do the pilots and start getting things a little closer on the measurements, we should be able to resolve that rather nicely. But you can't go anywhere on this engine without having this infrastructure in there, even if all you want is a dummy locomotive with no power. Now I've left this open, similar like on my F3 and F7s, All Nation units, in case I want to use tower drives on here. And you could probably easily drop in a P&D drive mechanism, and it should accommodate it. So for a nice two-rail engine, this is a really fun project, and the cost is relatively low to bring the infrastructure back to this model. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, share it, comment, and subscribe.